Never has this dinner been more important, and the mission of the Holocaust Museum ever been more important. It is at a time in which not just the acts against Jewish kids going to school, against a synagogue downtown, but to remind all of us of our common humanity and our common values that thread us together as a city, a state, and a country. And those values at this very moment are under assault. Under assault because not only the Jewish kids couldn't go to school, but under assault where it's also fair, easy, and thought right to shoot 2 Indians in Kansas. It's also under assault, and I tell you this story. The other day I had General Milley, the 4-star general of the Army here in the city of Chicago. We went to Phoenix Military School. If you don't know this, in Chicago, every branch of the armed forces runs a high school. Kids, 80% graduate, 90% go on to college. 10,000, only city in America, every branch of the armed service runs a high school. 10,000 kids in the junior ROTC, the largest in the United States. Mayor Daley and I worked together and helped create the Marine Math and Science. We took a tour because I'm working with them and doing a STEM education at Phoenix Military. As we were walking around, we then sat and had a round table with kids. Kids were talking, and they're from all branches, mainly kids of color. And this one man who, like had a big personality said, "I'm a math genius." I said, "Not good at math, you're a math genius." He goes, "Yeah, I'm a math genius." His older brother had dropped out, but he got his younger brother to enlist at the Phoenix military. So afterwards, General and I were standing and talking with 20 kids. And the general said to the young man, "What do you want to do?" He says, "I want to be in the Army Corps of Engineers." He says, "Well, you should go to West Point, I'll write you a letter." And they're in full uniform, he's in full uniform, and the young man says to the general, "I can't." He goes, "I'm the head of the Army. You can go." And here's a young man, strapping young man, a senior, and he starts to well up. So I lean over and I say to the general, "He's a dreamer. He can't go." And you can start to see all these kids, unbelievably disciplined, start to well up. And I said, "All right, 20 of you. How many of you are dreamers?" 8, 9 of their hands go up, and they just start crying. They are the only people in their families speak English. For weeks, their parents haven't been out of the house because they're fear of what's going to happen to them. In the United States of America, we have kids holding their families together whose parents are scared to go out in the street because they're scared the United States government is going to pick them and take them off and move them out of here. When we say as a city, as a dinner, never again. When the boat of St. Louis came to the shores of America, America was silent. I say to you tonight, this dinner is important, the mission of the museum is important, because this is our moment as a community. This is our St. Louis. Our kids, because their name is Hernandez, Gonzalez. The biggest drop-off in our attendance at Chicago Public Schools was 3 days after the election. In the United States of America, kids are scared to go to school. Their parents are scared to go shopping. What does never again mean to us as a city? Are we to repeat it? When President Bush gave his speech in the Holocaust museums, President Bush said, "Never again is not about the past, it's about the future." I would posit to you that that future is today. 100 years ago this year, my grandfather came to the city of Chicago. Not a word of English, didn't know anybody but a third cousin he had never met. Left Moldova because of the pogroms. His parents put him on a boat and he never to see his parents again. He didn't come to a Chicago because it was a place on the map. He came to a place that represented ideas, values, a promise of tomorrow. His grandson is now the mayor of that city. This is the greatest city in the greatest country in the world because we have values that we share. Values that say, if you work hard and you believe that tomorrow is better than yesterday, you can do great. But you go tell that young man at Phoenix High School that's what we believe. And I would say to you, it is wrong if it happens at a synagogue. It is wrong if in Little Village on 26th Street, people are not shopping because they're scared in the United States. The government will pick them up. Every one of us traveled a different road to this city. We came here because our parents and our grandparents thought that here in America, your children and your grandchildren can achieve something. It was a set of ideas and values. It wasn't just in the middle of America. It represented something. That is under assault today. And I will tell you, being a welcoming city is not an ordinance or a piece of legislation. It's about who we are. That whether you travel the Atlantic, the Pacific, or the Rio, or up the Mississippi, Chicago is where the American dream will always be alive, and we will never turn our back on our past because it is our future. So when the world turned a blind eye to the children of St. Louis and sent them back to Germany, we know what happened to them. We've all read those books to our children and demanded that they read them. I would say to you that we are normalizing and allowing to be normalized across this country where a synagogue, a Jewish day school, Indians, gay and lesbians, Mexicans, people of different faiths and religions can be isolated and picked on because they are a minority. And it is incumbent upon us who say to ourselves, not only never again, but to learn the lessons of history so they don't repeat themselves, that we have to have our voices heard. And we all know the famous poem, or the famous statement, by Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, and I'm not a socialist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the trade unionists. I'm not a trade unionist. I didn't say anything. Then they came for the Jews, and I'm not Jewish, so I didn't say anything. And when they came for me, there was no one there to speak up for me. So whether it is against a Mexican American, whether it is against an African American, whether it is against a gay and lesbian, whether it is against a Jewish child, whether it is against a place of worship, whether it is a Muslim, our voices, it is incumbent upon us to have our voices heard for all the others. Never has our moment in time echoed, never has the mission of the museum been more important, not just because it's a place that tells us the past, because it's a place that reminds us of our moral responsibility to have our voices heard and never to be silenced. Thank you.